Welcome to Downey High School Online, home of the virtual Vikings. I hope you guys are doing well. Recently, on Tuesday, we talked about psychological disorders and what is a psychological disorder. So I'm just going to go over that really, really quick. This is something that you're not taking notes on because you already learned about it in the textbook. But this is basically something that disturbs someone individually where they cannot do normal functions. That is basically a psychological disorder, something that's dysfunctional, something that's maladaptive, that inhibits their life. They're often accompanied by distress and determined by culture. So the causes of disorder, uh, back then in like the 1700s, if you were mentally ill, if you're schizophrenic, chances are that you were possessed by demons. And that kind of changed when we get to more of a medical model, which is basically why is this person sick? How did they get better? And then basically psychology takes that and kind of uses that for their own diagnosis. And so this is how we treat, psychological illness. And so there's many different things that can contribute to a psychological disorder: a biological influence, a psychological influence, a social cultural influence. All of these can contribute together to create a psychological disorder. And so we're just kind of going over these really, really quick because you've already learned about it. A way that psychologists determine if someone has a psychological illness or mental illness is through the DSM. So you've heard about this. This basically, it's a huge 500-page book, and it pretty much lists categories of psychological disorders. So if you have anxiety disorder, if you have depression, if you have any type of disorder, it's going to list it. And then there's different types of that disorder. So it's very, very specific. And why does this matter? Why do we use the DSM? The DSM is how we legally diagnose someone with the disorder. All right. So the insurance, they're only going to want to pay for it if they know that it's real, because they don't want people, and as sad as it is, disguising that they have a mental illness when they don't. So therefore, we have a DSM to truly diagnose those people that need help. Now, as sad as it is kind of bad for those people to pretend that they have a mental illness, because there are some people out there that do have a mental illness and now they have a bad rap, and that contributes to the stigma of mental illness that we talked about. All right, so this is basically chapters of the DSM, and it goes through all of this right here: sleep-wake disorders, feeding and eating disorders, semantic symptom disorders. These are all chapters in the DSM. Okay, so why is this good? Well, pros: when we label a disorder, we can get proper treatment and it makes sure that a person feels validated that they are going through stuff like that. Cons is it contributes back to stigma. We might view that person differently, which could in turn kind of contributes or kind of makes the disease or mental illness kind of like less than what it is. All right, and we get labeling bias. Okay, so here's the part where you are starting to take notes, and we're going to be talking about anxiety disorders. Now, anxiety is basically distressing, or you have a persistent anxiety or a behavior that produces anxiety. That is basically what the descriptions are. And the general symptoms are trembling, sweating, rapid heart rate, shortness of breath, increased blood pressure, flushed face, faintness, and a headache. So if you look to the right to that mental image, or to this image right here to the right, you can be experiencing anxiety if you have one of these following symptoms. So you have avoidance, you don't want to participate in that behavior; sweating, stomach issues, you feel pain, like you're going to throw up, or maybe you're going to go to the restroom, panic attacks, procrastinating. Now, I want to let you guys know right now that everybody has anxiety. Okay? Anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety is a natural thing. Anxiety goes all the way back to evolution, where we were cavemen and women, and we had anxiety that an animal would come and hunt us. All right, and that keeps us alert. Anxiety keeps us alert. We have adrenaline that pumps through our body that causes us to act in the moment. So anxiety, from actually in an evolutionary point, was a good thing, which allows our ancestors to survive. However, we don't live in that time anymore. We don't have to worry about a dinosaur. I'm just kidding. We don't have to worry about, I guess, a saber-toothed cat chasing us down the stretch. Our anxiety now has to deal with tests. We have anxiety with tests. We have anxiety with getting into a good school. We have anxiety with maybe even passing a class. And all that stuff we cannot really fight. And so that builds up inside of us. Okay? Now, what makes it a disorder is when you cannot do the normal things in your life. All right? So a big one is phobia. All right, so a phobia is an exaggerated, persistent, irrational, or disruptive fear of a specific object or situation. So a phobia doesn't have to be necessarily a thing. It could actually be an event or a place. And so most common phobias that you've probably are aware of is agoraphobia. Open places or public space places where an escape from a panic attack would be difficult. Claustrophobia, small enclosed spaces, and arachnophobia. So phobia is the fear of, and then in the front of the phobia is what they're scared of. And so spiders, some person might be terrified of spiders. As we mentioned before, agoraphobia is fear of open places like such, or public places like this. All right, and there has been instances with agoraphobia where people are scared of walking down hallways because it's so open. They don't know what's going to happen down the stretch, and so they're scared of the future, of future incidences or of coming up. There's been instances where people cannot even leave their own room. They have to stay in the room. Now that is when it becomes a disorder. Okay, if you're scared of a spider, you have a spider. If you're scared of a spider, all right, to the point where you cannot leave your house because you're scared you're going to run into one, that's when it becomes a disorder. If you're just scared of spiders and when you see one you kind of freak out about it, then that's not really a disorder. You're just kind of scared of spiders because you can live on with your life. So there's a key difference in between having anxiety and then having an anxiety disorder. So phobia symptoms that you probably could have at any moment in this YouTube video. You can pause it if I'm going too quick. So feel free to do that. If you have phobia symptoms, you avoid the object or situation, and it pretty much alters your life completely. That's when it becomes a disorder. You have an increased heart rate, over breathing, and loss of control. This is kind of when you have a panic attack. Four specific major phobia categories involve animals, situations, medical treatments, natural environment, things of that nature. This increases anxiety, and you could have possible panic attacks. Now, this is just a list or just kind of a quick snapshot of what certain phobias are. There's some wild ones right here. So you have pyrophobia, psychophobia, phobiophobia, which is fear of your own fears. That's probably like the worst. Pedophobia, fear of children or dolls. Gynophobia, fear of women. Hematophobia, fear of blood. Mysophobia, fear of dirt. Androphobia, fear of men. So there's all kinds. So if you want to like pause it, you can look at all of this stuff. There's some really interesting ones as bacteriophobia, fear of germs. So kind of interesting to see. All right, now one of a really famous psychological experiment has to do with little Albert. So little Albert is actually this baby right here. I think about 1 year old, around 1950s, 1960s. He did a study. I believe it was Albert Bandura, who is this person right here, and he basically wanted to know if he can condition little Albert to be scared of a certain animal. All right, so little Albert, as you can see in this infographic, this is how he created a fear of a white rat. So your natural response to a white rat, especially when you're a newborn who has not experienced the world yet, is you might not have any reaction to a white rat. You've never seen a white rat. You don't know what they do. You don't know what it is. You haven't been taught that rats are dirty. And as a society, we kind of know that rats are very, very unclean. They carry disease. But as a newborn, you won't know that. However, an unconditioned response is a loud noise. Whenever you hear a loud noise, boom, you freak out. You kind of get scared. And that's a natural response. It's unconditioned. All right. So what they did is that they took the white rat, and every time they brought the white rat to little Albert, they did a large bang. Bam! So now you're taking an unconditioned response, your natural response of a loud noise, which causes you to be kind of scared and startled. And now what little Albert does is he pairs that response with the white rat. So every time he saw the white rat, he got scared. So now he was conditioned. Whenever he saw a white rat, he was scared because of the loud noise. All right. Now, what actually came out is he actually took that fear, he internalized it, and he applied it to anything that was white. It could have been a Santa Claus beard. It could have been a rabbit. Anything white and fluffy, he was scared of. All right. Now, this was an experiment that got a lot of backlash because they pretty much harmed an innocent human being. There's a lot of effects for little Albert because they made him scared of something. So this would be unethical in today's psychological world. But is it an interesting study because it shows how behavior impulses could cause a conditioned fear response. So how do we treat phobia? Most of the time, people never seek treatment. A lot of times, people could be really, really scared of a certain event or a certain thing, and they will never seek treatment because it's not that. I mean, it's not as it doesn't hurt them in the everyday life. All right. Other things is you could try to get medication to help you with the treatment, maybe reduce your anxiety. There's a thing called systematic desensitization, cognitive behavioral therapy, which basically it tries to teach you how little Albert was taught to not fear the rat or to fear the rat. They kind of do that so that you cannot fear your phobia. So they slowly progress into helping you get over your phobia. And how they would do that is for little Albert's case, what they would do is they would slowly introduce the rat to him, maybe from afar, maybe get up a little bit like a picture of him. And then eventually what they would try to do is get him to hold the rat. And once you've done that, you kind of gradually increase and you realize, wow, I'm not going to die from this phobia. And now I can move on with my life. That's what systematic desensitization is. Also, in that same category is modeling therapy. Modeling therapy is basically you show that person who has that fear that it is okay to have that fear. However, it shouldn't be threatening to your life. So what they might do is they might show a video of a person holding the rat. So he knows like, hey, this person, little Albert's like, hey, this person is holding the rat. I'm going to be fine. It's not going to hurt me. So that's modeling therapy. So those I wanted to tell you a little story about that most that never seek treatment. My grandmother, born in a third world country, El Salvador, and while she was there, when she was a little girl, she was sleeping at night. So she was sleeping at night. Her family didn't have much. I think she might have been sleeping probably on the floor, and so she had her covers on. And while she was sleeping, she kind of felt something kind of like go over her feet. And so she didn't really think about much of it. She thought, maybe it was her brother or whatever. So she rolls over, tries to go back to sleep. Again, feels something going over her feet. She opens underneath the covers. 2 rats were crawling all over her. She freaked out, screamed, and to this day cannot even look at a rat. We couldn't even go to Chuck E. Cheese. When a commercial of Chuck E. Cheese would come on, she would flip out. And so me and my little brother would sometimes like get a picture of a rat and we would show her just to freak her out, and then we got in trouble. She's never seeked medical treatment. All right, but she's moved on with her life. Now to the point where if she did not get out of her house because she was worried about seeing a rat or seeing Chucky from Chuck E. Cheese, then that's when it would become a problem. But she was able to kind of go about it. Is it okay to have that fear? I mean, I think she should have probably tried to got over it. However, it didn't interrupt her life. Panic disorder. Okay, so this again deals with anxiety. This is when an individual is fearful or apprehensive, but often doesn't know exactly what he or she is afraid of. So fear of having a fear. Symptoms. Panic attacks are pretty minutes long episode of intense dread. You might experience terror or chest pain, choking, or a frightening sensation. People that have panic attacks, they receive shortness of breath, they're dizzy, and have a rapid heart rate. So if you ever seen someone having a panic attack, the best thing for them to do, especially if you're not trained, is try to get them to focus on their breathing. Have them try to listen to you, because right now they're scared. They're worrying like, hey, I can't breathe. I don't feel good. I'm sweating. I'm trembling. So what you need to try to do as a person is, obviously, maybe you want to call 911, and you want to have them focus on their breathing, become grounded. All right, take their hands, tell them, hey, can you feel my hands? Can you feel the floor? You want them to kind of be mindful of their situation and bring them back into their centered selves. And the treatment for this, for someone who has a panic attack, is psychotherapy, biochemical, meaning give them some kind of medication and talk to them about why might they have a panic attack. This was probably going to stem back with psychotherapy to childhood. Maybe they experienced something very, very traumatic, and this is causing them to have panic attacks. All right, now this one is very common. Basically, generalized anxiety disorder is an excessive or unrealistic worry about life circumstances that lasts for at least 6 months. So basically, you might be worried about getting a job. Maybe you're worried about getting into college, and it becomes an anxiety disorder when you stop doing your everyday functions. So you're constantly worrying, you're constantly tense, but you're tired because you cannot sleep, shortness of breath, headache, all this stuff is a generalized anxiety disorder. Now, again, I've told you guys in the beginning of this YouTube video, it is natural to have some form of anxiety. Okay, anxiety is actually a good thing. Anxiety helps you prepare. It helps you prepare for in a future event, maybe a test. Maybe it helps you prepare if you're maybe on a sports team and you guys are going to play in a championship game. You're going to feel anxiety. However, it becomes a problem when you cannot do your everyday functions. That's, again, that's what you can distinguish between a disorder and just having anxiety. I have anxiety. I'm worried about school. I'm worried about work. I worry about a lot of stuff. Okay. However, again, take that time to be mindful, be aware of your circumstances, and be grateful for what you have. You need to ground yourself. Can always be worrying about the future. All right. So treatment. Again, same thing. All right, biochemical, medical drugs, psychotherapy, get them to focus on relaxation and exercise. This one is a big one, and it's obsessive compulsive disorder, which is OCD, which you might have heard of. This also deals with anxiety, because what happens is people have a thought or an idea that something is going to happen. And in order for them to stop, or in order for those images, for those thoughts to go away, they have to do an action in order to get rid of it. Okay. So this is anxiousness, irritability, daily life. And these are the treatments. So OCD could be like, I'm worried that, and the common one is like, they're worried that maybe there's a gas leak in the house. So a gas leak commonly occurs with the stove. If you leave the stove gas on and you're not aware of it, it could flood the house, and it could cause people to suffocate with carbon monoxide poisoning. So someone who has OCD is worried that the gas is going to flood the house and kill them. So what they have to do is, they have that thought, gas leak. All right. What they do is, in order to get rid of that thought, they have to do a compulsion, which is an action. And so their action is, I got to check to see if the stove is turned off. So they turn the stove off, and then they go back, and then that's how they get rid of the thought. But what happens is, with the people that have OCD, is they actually have to do this compulsion more than once. They might have to do it 5 times. So in order for that thought to go away, they have to turn the stove off, then on, then off, then on, then off, then on. All right, that's when it becomes an obsession or an OCD, which can interfere with their life. That's when it becomes a disorder. All right, so how do you treat that? Medication, again, serotonin and dopamine, and then talking to them about their actions, and then flooding. All right, so flooding is basically, you flood them with images and the thoughts, and you just overwhelm them with those thoughts, and eventually they realize, hey, I'm gonna be fine. That's what the term flooding is. So this is just a quick image. This is common obsession and compulsion among children and adolescents. Big percentage of thoughts is of germs and toxins. And then also the compulsive behavior is excessive hand washing. As you know, during this time, and exactly why I'm doing this lecture online, is we are living in a pandemic. This has not happened in 100 years. It's very interesting to see. There's going to be a lot of anxiety kind of going around, and this might be one of them. Germs and things of that nature. Um, and at the end of this, we're going to go over like just help that you can have, and we're really going to focus. I mean, we are going to talk about these mental illnesses, but we're really going to focus on is mental health, staying healthy mentally, things that you can do that can strengthen your mind and things of that nature. This is the vicious cycle of OCD. So you have your obsessive thought, the gas leak, anxiety, right? You worry that it's going to come. Then you have your compulsive behavior, which is to turn it off 5 times, right? Click it on, click it off, click it on, click it off. So you know that it's off. Then you have temporary relief. Then you go back to the thought. All right. And for some people, it gets very, very intense where that this temporary relief and compulsive behavior is shortened, or this temporary relief is shortened. And then the obsessive thought and the compulsive behavior gets longer. And these people are in a vicious, vicious cycle. All right. So we talked a lot about anxiety. Anxiety primarily focuses on future worry, which is different than depression. Oftentimes, depression has to do with the past, but anxiety deals with the future. If you are ever feeling overwhelmed with life, please contact your counselor if you need help. Okay. Anything that you're going through, please, there's people out there that are going to help you. If you feel overwhelmed, contact your counselor, shoot them an email. They're going to go out of their way to help you. They probably will get the school site. I mean, if it's serious, they will get extra help for you. So if you ever need that, also there is the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health and the National Suicide Prevention Line here. If you're ever feeling worried, if you're ever feeling depressed, there are resources out there that can help you. There's well-being apps. Go ahead and pause this video right now, and you can actually open up your phone to the camera roll. And when you open up to your camera roll, what you can do is you can actually focus your camera on this QR code. You don't even have to take a picture of it. You just focus on it, and then once you focus on it, your camera is automatically going to lock on, and it's going to say open in Safari on the top. It's going to be like a little notification bar. You open it up, and it's going to take you to the lacounty.gov website where it talks about all the resources for mental health that they offer. All right. You can also text LA to 714 or 741-741. These are a list of numbers, websites that you can go on to. Feel free to pause at any time. There is help out there. All right, hot journals. We don't need to do that. But anyway, that is pretty much anxiety. There's a lot of people that live with anxiety. Everybody has anxiety, but to the point where it stops your everyday life, that's when it becomes a problem. So guys, feel free if you have any questions to reach out to me. If you're feeling kind of worried yourself, contact your counselors, talk to your parents. I feel like whenever I feel anxious, I feel that I'm going through some trouble, for some reason, it just helps me to talk it out. That's just how I feel better with myself. There's a bunch of things that you can do. Maybe you want to write it out. Maybe you want to draw, participate, exercise, do everything you can to, improve your mental health. So anyway, that's it. Hope to see you guys soon. All right, bye-bye.